Yeah, I mean, it's a youth event, right? No stress on it. Okay. So a very good morning to our guest of honor, Climate Change Officer of the British High Commission, Mr. Loganathan, Professor Dr. Fredolin, LUs, ladies and gentlemen. So today, to begin this event, we'd like to call upon CEA Ling, our Malaysian Youth Delegation representative, to say a few words.
A very good morning to everyone. Okay, I want to first bid you a very warm welcome this morning and extend the thanks of the Malaysian Youth Delegation for this excellent support you are providing for the Malaysian Youth Statement on Climate Change toward COP21 and today's promulgation ceremony. Special thanks to the Climate Change Officer of the British High Commission, Mr. Loganathan, and our trainer of the day, Professor Fredolin Tangang. It all started with a burning pitch of determination and passion to create a just, safe, and livable future for all. The Malaysian Youth Delegation is a climate change movement towards clean, renewable energy and safe climate future for all. We aspire to be the voice of Malaysian youth at the Conference of Parties of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or the UNFCCC COP. 20 Malaysian youth from all over the nation have gathered and have worked together to achieve their mutual goals in the upcoming 21st session of COP. We hope that we can represent the youth climate movement in Malaysia to hold our we hope that we can represent the youth climate movement in Malaysia, to hold our leaders accountable for their actions, to pursue justice for the victims of climate change, to work together with the local and international frontline communities, and most importantly, to seek solutions. During the journey to COP21, our delegates have successfully represented the civil society in the Bonn Intersessional of UNFCCC. Besides, we were being invited by local radio station for an interview on MYD and Conference of Parties. In order to act in solidarity with other Asian youth, 10 of us participated in the Asian Power Shift in Singapore. A series of trainings conducted by climate and media experts has deepened our vision and knowledge on the issues. And today, we proudly promulgate the Malaysian Youth Statement on Climate Change towards COP21. We strive to bring Malaysian youth's voice and our beliefs beyond the boundary of this nation to Paris. And before I hand over to Rachel, I want to say once more on behalf of the Malaysian Youth Delegation, welcome. It's a pleasure to see so many of you here, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Yiling. So today's training series will be featuring a session with Professor Dr. Fredolin Tangang. Professor Dr. Fredolin Tangang is a Professor of Climatology at the School of Environmental and Natural Resource Sciences, Faculty of Science and Technology at the National University of Malaysia. He has served at UCAM for 27 years. He obtained his PhD from the University of British Columbia in 1997, where he conducted and developed the model forecast, the El Nino. He has been a fellow of the Academy of Sciences Malaysia since 2011. He was a vice Vice Chair of the IPCC Working Group for the Fifth Assessment Cycle. Professor Tangang is also currently serving as a member of the CORDEX Scientific Advisory Team since 2015. He's also a project leader of CORDEX Southeast Asia, and his research interests include meteorology over Maritime Continent, climate variability, climate change, and regional climate and ocean modeling. So today he'll be discussing in his session about climate change, key findings of IPCC Fifth Assessment Report and their relevance to the UNFCCC. So without further ado, let's welcome him to the stage.
Thank you. Very good morning, colleagues, Mr. Muru. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this is a very exciting event. Thanks to Adrian Yo and his team for inviting me to this, I said, very important event. They told me I'm supposed to train. I'm not really sure. For us, train means that you have to lab works and all kind of things. But I think this is just a talk, sharing knowledge. People said sharing is caring. So I don't think I will keep the knowledge within myself without me sharing to other people. I know that some of you, getting excited. In about a month or so, you will be going to Paris to join thousands of people on this COPs 21. And I would say, in terms of carbon footprint, carbon release for this travel also maybe is important for climate change. But anyway, today I would like to share key finding of the Fifth Assessment Report and how it is relevant, of course, to the UNFCCC. Myself from UKM in Bangi, I'm actually officially no longer part of the IPCC. I was a vice chair of Working Group I. But in early October, early this month, we had an election, new lineup of the IPCC for the Sixth Assessment Report, and the result is not very favorable. I was a candidate for the number 2 position, IPCC Vice Chair, but I lost. And then I stand for Working Group I co-chair. Again, I lost. So I think it's good and difficult to in fact, no one from the Working Group I actually was able to retain a different position in the new lineup. So it's totally new lineup. But anyway, I'm still, available to share knowledge. So, in fact, next week I'll be going to Japan to give a talk in Japan as well. I'm also part of the fellow at the Academy of Sciences Malaysia. Okay, I guess it doesn't work. I'm sure everybody knows what is IPCC, what is UNFCCC, but it's good to maybe give a little bit of background before we start, because the presentation is about what is the relevance of IPCC in UNFCCC. So basically, I would say IPCC and UNFCCC are two bodies that deal directly with the issue related to climate change, although there are other bodies as well, but these are two main bodies under the United Nations that deal with climate change. So the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, in short, UNFCCC, basically is an environmental treaty. It's a convention. It was started in Rio de Janeiro and came into force in 1984. And I think now all countries in the world become signatory to this treaty. And you heard of this COP. COP is really a conference of parties. It's sort of a body that making decision is convention. So Malaysia is part of it. Almost all countries are part of this. And of course, meeting after meeting, trying to achieve the objective. And of course, the objective is well, before I say the objective, maybe of course there is objective, which is trying to implement what science tells you. So decision on climate change issue, of course, requires or must be based on scientific finding. So for UNFCCC negotiation in COPs, the science must be based on the decision, the convention. The decision must be based on the scientific finding. So where is this scientific finding coming from? It is an international convention. It is international meeting. So the science must be neutral. The science must be transparent. The science must come from the international body. It cannot come from America, although we know that most of the science comes from America. The report cannot be coming from America. The report cannot be coming from Europe or a particular country, because simply if that is the case, and then a particular country said, no, we don't believe America. No, we don't believe this particular country and so on. So he has to be neutral, okay? And that is why IPCC is important and play a role in producing this report. And the finding from IPCC actually become sort of a guideline or sort of a basis for the negotiation. In fact, in Paris, what they're trying to achieve is to come to an agreement. How do you get the world so that you can avoid this 2 degrees C? So where is this 2 degrees coming from? It's basically coming from IPCC. So this is the one that I'm going to tell you in this talk actually. Not really a training, I was told that I need to train how to create modeling. That is impossible to talk like this. So why IPCC? Although IPCC was set up much earlier, actually, it's almost like 57 years ago, and UNFCCC is just 1994. Prior to the establishment of the IPCC, there were already growing numbers of literature, scientific findings from scientists around the world to indicate that actually the Earth climate system is warming up. There were already scientific findings at the time, before the IPCC was set up. So there was already growing concern that something is changing. So, but again, the same kind of concern that if America is doing it, other countries would not be able to use it as a, well, I mean, unfortunately, that's how the world politics works. So, in that case, we need independent, we need objective, fair assessment, transparent assessment of the state and the global climate system. For that reason, the United Nations General Assembly, 42nd, proposed the establishment of IPCC actually. And in 1988, IPCC was established under two parallel organizations, which is the Nino and UNEP. These are two parallel organizations, which every meeting they will come into the podium and give speech. And whenever we are meeting, there will be a representative from this two parallel organization. So IPCC has been providing assessment report for the last 27 years. In fact, 5 assessment reports already, in addition to a numbers of special reports, including on renewable energy, extreme event in this cycle, the previous cycle. So, and this report basically, a source of information in terms of what are causes of climate change, what are the potential impacts on build, as well as natural system and also the socio-economic system. And what is the possible response? What we need to do in order to not making it even worse. So these are the three things, and because of these three kind of thing, it basically sort of making it or create the structure of the IPCC to answer these three, which has three sort of three working groups. Working group 1, working group 2, working group 3. Working group 1 is basically the physical basis, which is on the climatological aspect. Working group 2 looking at the impacts and variability, all system, and working group 2 deal with mitigation, which is answering the last part of the question that I mentioned in the earlier slide. And there is another one which is so-called task group on national greenhouse gas emission. This is deal with how do you measure things and so on, implement this at the national level. So, so IPCC work in this structure, but all countries basically part of this. So member of this IPCC and final decision basically, done by the countries or by the members. But more importantly, it is the authors, it is the contributors, it is review editors and so on that is part of the group that actually supposed to do the reporting and so on. So people always misunderstood that IPCC is the one who do research, but actually IPCC does not do research. IPCC does not do this. IPCC basically assess the knowledge, available knowledge in literatures, in journals, in wherever. Assess this knowledge and produce a report. In this report, will be showing the next one. Will be kind of complex here, but this is some sort of a flow chart. The flow chart where the authors team will come up with the draft report, and then another set of people, government scientists, will look at this thing, and finally, word by word approval session. Word by word. This is like a week, day and night. Scientists and government representative scientists negotiate. Okay, this word is okay. This. So some people think that this is not really a true scientific way of doing, but as far as I know, as far as I experience, the science is maintained. The science is basically, if the scientists say, okay, this is something like this. Government say we need to change a little bit the word like this. If the scientist okay, the meaning is not okay, so let's not change its own acceptable. It is okay. Okay, so it doesn't mean that government can change the way they like, and as long as the scientists are okay, you change the word a little bit. That's fine, as long as the meaning, the scientific integrity is maintained. But this process sometimes takes days, and that's why in the approval session, you tend to have like, especially toward the last couple of days, that within a week, it's a non-stop process for the scientists to approve. But overall, my experience tell me that this is really a comprehensive exercise. Balanced and open as well as transparent exercise by the IPCC. So IPCC throughout the last 27 years or so came up with all kind of report. From the first report, assessment report, to the second, third, the fourth one. This is where they get the Nobel Peace Prize, and of course the fifth one is this one here. So I was part of this process, the fifth assessment report. In the sixth assessment report has just started. As I said, the new lineup of the IPCC Biru member have been selected, have been elected. So they will have 7 years or so to produce another set of report on the sixth assessment report. Okay, so I'm getting into the scientific aspect of the report here. So the last 100 years or so, the temperature has been increasing. Globally, this is a global. This is a global average. This is average annual. This is actually annual average. This is decadal average. Okay, this is annual average. So for the last 100 years or so, temperature has been increasing. As you can notice, especially the last, since the middle of 20th century is just going on. But if we look at the last 3 decades, the last 30 years or so, temperature has been rising. Of course, within this, you have a fluctuation of so-called internal variability. But again, almost every year, temperature record basically has been made. The highest temperature record has been made. And in fact, if you look at these 3 decades, the last decade that we have here is the warmest. In fact, in northern hemisphere, for example, this has been the warmest in 1,000 years. So, if we look at now globally, that's less than a degree. Less than a degree, of course. What is less than a degree for us? If you look at individual, but for the Earth, this is tremendous heat. Less than a degree is already a tremendous heat for the climate system. If we look at globally, of course, the warming rate is not uniform. Some part of the region is already experiencing higher than 2 degrees C, especially the northern part there. For our region, this is around perhaps a degree, per century, meaning for the last 100 years, our temperature has been increasing for a degree C. But this is consistent. If you take the global, take the temperature record that we have in Malaysia, this is very much consistent. This data here is very much consistent with our local observed temperature. And because of this, because of the amount of heat that creating this kind of increase, temperature increase, IPCC concluded that the warming of the climate system basically critical. So where is the energy coming from? So you need, to understand it, to understand this, you need to understand a little bit about climate. Of course, the energy is coming from the sun. Some people say energy coming from the earth, from earthquake, whatever. Now, there could be a little bit here and there, but it's just really insignificant. But the energy is coming from the solar radiation, of course, shortwave radiation. And then, because of the nature of our system, our climate system, which is we have atmosphere, and atmosphere acts like a blanket, which is without atmosphere keeping the so-called greenhouse effect, our Earth it would be much cooler actually. Greenhouse effect is something good by itself, because otherwise the Earth will be much cooler on an average of temperature average. But too much of this greenhouse effect is also not good. because too much of it basically, you know, meaning that you will retain too much of the heat. So how this thing work? So solar radiation coming into the Earth through the atmosphere through shortwave radiation from the sun, of course, shortwave radiation, and it basically can penetrate the surface of the Earth without much problem. You know, so greenhouse gases is not a problem. Greenhouse fact is not an issue when, you know, solar radiation coming into the, but it is the temperature. It is actually the heat that going from the sun and from the Earth into the atmosphere, into the outer space, which is in the form of long wave radiation, is problem. Okay, so this is being controlled by the greenhouse gases. So you can think of it. It cannot come out everywhere, but you know, in terms of, if you can imagine the wavelength, it can only come out in a certain wavelength, and this wavelength is controlled by greenhouse gases. So I'm saying it's a window for it to escape. So if you have more greenhouse gases, I mean the window become narrow and narrow, basically. So so the more greenhouse gases, the more the heat is being trapped, and this is measured as this quantity. So the scientists, when they're talking about climate change, they're looking at this radiative forcing. So this is the amount of energy or heating in terms of its change, which is defined as changes in energy flux caused by either natural or anthropogenic drivers of climate change. The unit is basically watts per meter squared. So this is the quantity that the scientists actually very much interested if they want to look at the changes in the climate system in terms of heating. You know. But this greenhouse effect is not new. It's not the IPCC invented. This is all science. This is basically all science that is covered, you know, 100 years ago or so, you know, by a Nobel laureate from Sweden, and which he was the one actually published a paper highlighting this greenhouse effect. And the first person who predicted emission of CO2 from fossil fuels would cause global warming. So in fact, without any computers at that particular time, I believe, he predicted that doubling the CO2 concentration would result into 5 to 6 degrees C. In fact, that kind of prediction, it must be very brilliant, I think. That kind of prediction, not very far from IPCC using all kind of models. So I would say IPCC does not really make a great finding by you know, in terms of projection, which is already done like 100 years ago. But he was wrong on one thing. According to the papers that he wrote, that, you know, he predicted that it will take 3,000 years to double CO2. 3,000 years. That was like 100 years ago. 3,000 years is a long, you know. But obviously, this is the way we, you know, the way we try to double this is much faster what he predicted. In fact, IPCC would think that the doubling will take place in a century if nothing is being done, basically. So, so this is the issue here. This is actually the observed globally average greenhouse concentration in part per million. We have a scale for CO2 here, and we have methane there. And so the CO2 is the green one here. You know. So currently we have basically about 400 ppm, and steadily increasing the last 100 years or so, and even so during the last 50 years, 5 decades. So so where we and of course scientists have been able to gather data from like a million years ago, not from the observed data, not directly observed, of course, but from proxy. For example, from the ice core, they've done this in Antarctica, where they drill the ice and get the ice core. And in this ice core, you have these bubbles of air. In fact, the deeper you go, the longer record you can retrieve. So in time. So they've done this, and this is actually a map. This picture actually not the recent one. This is a fourth assessment report, but almost similar, I suppose. This is for about 600 years, and for the current report, this actually has been extended into 800 years, almost a million. So if you look at this is the CO2, and you have this fluctuation of, and this is thousands of years. This is not like this is in thousands of years. So there is a fluctuation, and this is associated with a natural fluctuation in the climate system, associated with glacial interglacial. I know you know this glacial interglacial. We have more ice during glacial time, less interglacial, because of the the so-called Milankovitch cycle. But as you can see that the CO2 fluctuate, and this is perfectly okay because it's naturally, because when you have warmer period, you have more CO2, but CO2 are absorbed in the ocean and so on. But the thing is that the natural fluctuation of these is between 200 ppm and 300 ppm. Okay, the natural fluctuation. So when we started to mess up with the world in the beginning of the industrial era, with all kind of invention that requires fossil fuel, which is actually you dig it up, which is something already naturally stored down there. Carbon, which is stored down there, you dig it up and then use that to propel the economy in an unsustainable way, which is pumping things up again into the atmosphere, and then you start to have this. Okay, start to have this, and naturally it should be going, but instead of going down, we just going up and up and up, except there is no stop. Okay, now it's already 400 ppm. Oh, really? 15 minutes. So, okay, I'm trying my best. I'm still a long way, I think. So, so we will have a problem, and in fact, in recent decades, this is like the last. This is the last 10 years. This is the last 30 years or so. Still increasing. In fact, the last 10 years, despite the fact that the economy is not doing well, but globally, the emission is still going up. This is the data. This the data that have been obtained around the world. So where is this coming from? In 2010, for example, is most of it from energy, from land use, agriculture, and so on, from industry, transport, and so on. So all these basically activities that need to be rethink of how, so that our dependency on fossil fuel can be reduced, and the emission can be. This is a little bit technical. This is again, I said, the relative forcing. So to what extent scientists basically confidence in terms of looking at this relative forcing for each of these greenhouse gases. So this is in the form of again a watt per meter squared if you look at the CO2, is the highest greenhouse that has produced this radiative forcing. And if you can look at this, maybe you can only see, it says DH. The confidence level of this science is very, very high. You know, very, very high. The confidence level of this very, very high. There are a couple of things like L low here, which is perhaps still in the gray area. But overall, understanding about radiative forcing associated with emission of greenhouse is very, very high, basically. And if you look at the total anthropogenic forcing, if you compare different years, from 1950s, from 1980s to the current one, meaning it keeps increasing. It keeps increasing. Now, scientists also try to associate with the current warming, observed warming, okay, with that can be calculated from existing radiative forcing from the current accumulated concentration of greenhouse gases. They were able to calculate that greenhouse gases contribute this much, okay, contributed this much, but there are also greenhouse gases that has negative radiative forcing, for example, aerosol, okay, meaning it can cause cooling rather than warming. So if you add this and this, the result is this one, and this one and this one is almost the same length, which means that the warming, the observed warming thus far, basically can be explained by this radiative forcing. What about natural variability? So nothing. Okay, so the climate skeptic always say this is natural variability, but science does not tell it with this. Just looking at the energy balance, this radiative forcing things. So because of this, human influence is clear, and also by model. This is where people ask about me about models. So models, of course, is a human invention. It's not perfect, but the model that we have here, basically, if it's being forced by natural and anthropogenic forcing, okay, the natural variability as well as the anthropogenic forcing, basically, individually, perhaps there's some shift here and there, but if you have many models, the model will able to explain this warming. But if you force just by natural one, it does not able to explain this surge, but instead it going without that warming. So this is again an evidence that from the modeling point of view, model result point of view, that human influence is clear from the anthropogenic aspect of the forcing. So basically, the Earth has been in so-called radiative imbalance. What does it mean? It means that coming in is always been like before, not much change, but coming out become less and less. So where's the heat? The heat is being retained basically. So coming in is almost the same, but not much changes in the solar things. But going out from the system is becoming less and less. Why is that? Because you can think of the window as being smaller and smaller and smaller for the heat get out of the system. And the result is that the heat is being retained, And it says that it's basically certain that the Earth has gained substantial energy because of this for the last 50 years or so, based on evidence of observed evidence. And where's the heat going? Where's the heat actually? The heat is, most of this heat is stored in the ocean. Luckily, you have the ocean. The ocean has has a higher heat capacity that has the ability to store more heat than the atmosphere. Otherwise, our climate will become more hotter. But ocean also is the engine of climate, meaning that it can affect the functioning of the climate. And that's part of the reason typhoon become more stronger. Although perhaps not more frequent, but the intensity become more strong. So this is actually this graph here. This is indicated, this thing here. This is the heat content of the surface, about 700 meters or so. That the heat content has been increasing. This is not a lie, because the last so many years, the ocean basically is probed almost everywhere. We have this so-called Argo floats. Maybe you heard of this somewhere. Argo float. This is actually a float that can go into 2,000 meters and then coming back 2,000 meters by itself. Once they throw it in the ocean, unless it's captured by the fishermen, it can go like several years measuring this. So they have a tremendous data in the ocean looking at the heat content. So this is not invented in any way. So human activity, emission, atmospheric concentration, radiation forcing, and finally you have climate change. This is the situation that we have actually. So not climate not just changing, of course. Extremes weather has been changing, and this is really happening. Not just other part of the world, in our own backyard as well. Although a particular single event may be difficult to attribute, but we have, deep in our thinking that it could be this is something different. This flood is a bit different than something that So although scientifically it may be difficult to attribute one particular single, but it seems like there is a trend even in our country. Things are changing. So impact is already underway, not just one place, but almost part of the world. Now, please give me a little bit more time, because this is important. So that's what we observed so far the last 100 years, the last 30 years or so. But going forward, of course, we cannot observe. Nobody can observe the future. But we do have models, and we need to know what happened to what is the possibility for the climate to go if nothing is being done, if this much can reduce, if this much can reduce. And that requires what we call as emission scenario. And this is actually in the form of these numbers here. So RCP, this is so-called representative concentration pathways. It's some kind of hypothetical trajectory for where the world would go. And this is actually not part of IPCC work. This is other groups which blend all kind of possibility. And the numbers here represent what kilometer square, the radiative forcing at the end of the 21st century, 2100. And this one, 8.5, this is almost like 1,000, part per million. Almost like 1,000 part per million. Now 400 part per million, so still about 600 to go. This kind of so using these concentration pathways, scientists can model, project the future climate, and then for example, this is the temperature, average temperature again, and this is RCP 2.6, which is a world that requires substantial and sustained reduction of greenhouse gases. And this is, you will probably go if the world becomes so. I hope the world will, otherwise this is the young generation future, because if nothing is being done, okay, I have 5 minutes. Can I again for like 10 minutes? Yeah. So you see, this is a temperature change. This is on average, this one about 4 to 5 degrees C increase. But if you look at spatially, some part of the world even go about 10 degrees or so, 11 degrees. So, so this is a world. The world which is we have not experienced even in natural fluctuation, perhaps unprecedented. And of course, this is not an option for us. So in our region, part of the region, perhaps 3 to 5 degrees projected. Not just temperature, climate is changing, the system is changing, the monsoon. In our part of the world, we have this variability associated with El Nino and so on. But so far, IPCC has not been able to make any strong conclusion about how El Nino behave in the future. But I know there is a article that indicate El Nino will become stronger and so on. But IPCC need more evidence to this. But I would say this is where the science will go. The next 6th assessment report, as the evidence become more stronger, IPCC would be able to conclude about this feature of El Nino. I don't think we can afford to have more strong El Nino. Having 2-3 months is really suffering, isn't it? Lucky I travel a lot. But I went to Brazil last time, about 10 days, hoping to come back after 10 days, but it's still there. And then I go somewhere else and come back, it's still there. This time I hope it's cold, because I heard it's going to be this level. So not just we have a sea level. This is sea level. Sea level is expected to increase by a meter or so. In our region, could be half a meter. And this is going to be a problem for coastal cities, for agriculture, and so on, because of exclusion. Impacts is projected to increase, not just on all kind of aspects, basically. So, so it is important. The science tell you that if nothing is being done, they will go to this kind of scenario. So, so there is a need to limit this into 2 degrees C. And this is what, and then I'm getting back to the earlier question that I have, which is UNFCCC is trying to come up with the binding agreement so that the world will be committed into reducing this emission by 2 degrees C. So, but how can we go there? This is a couple of options here. We want to go here. Of course, we cannot afford this. If we go this trajectory, we go here. This is RCP 8.5, about 1,000 parts per million, which is more than double now. But if nothing is being done, we are around here basically. So we still have this option. But if we want to go here, we don't have